Okay, today we're going to do the EMEA and Pacific tier list. There's a lot of kind of decisions that could be made, particularly in EMEA, but we'll get to that. We'll do Americas and China tomorrow, but let's dive into it. We'll start with Pacific, and this was my Pacific ranking last time, which honestly, going down it, I think is not too bad, but there are a couple teams in particular that I think we need to move. So let's start then, and I think probably the better way of doing it is actually starting at the top. Because the top to me is pretty simple. We're going to put Paper X at the top. Obviously, they beat Gen G, and Gen G are still going to go into second, right? So there's really no, like, you know those teams are going to be at the top, of course. Paper X beat Gen G, so I'm going to put them number 1. Number 3, I think, is pretty easy as well here for Pacific, and that's DRX, right? DRX, I think, since adding Bane, there was some doubts about DRX, but I think that this is a pretty solid top 3. And I personally would be quite surprised if these weren't the 3 teams going to Shanghai, because I do think there is a bit of a tier gap between, this top 3 and the rest in Pacific right now. So, maybe someone else could sneak in there, but I do think that this is a pretty good likelihood that these are the 3 teams that will go to Shanghai. Okay, in 4th place, I'm going to put RRQ. RRQ decimated Bleed, and that's a sign of a good team. When you're beating the bad teams like handedly and you look comfortable doing it, that's a good sign for a team. And I really liked some of the things that RRQ were doing, the kind of like double flank Lotus stuff that they were doing. I thought was quite interesting. I thought, just in general, I thought they played pretty well, even on Icebox in a 4v5. They played pretty well there, with Flips getting no kills and still winning that map pretty easily. I would say they're pretty easily the 4th best team in Pacific right now, kind of almost maybe in a tier of their own. In 5th place, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it, and maybe they shouldn't be this high. You could make an argument that they should be a little lower, but I'm going to put DFM in 5th. I'm going to put them there because it's fun to do as a DFM bundle owner myself. Let's go DFM. So yeah, I'm going to put them in 5th. Obviously, they beat T1. That's pretty good. And then, okay, they did lose to Gen G. It is Gen G, most teams in this kind of range, I think, would lose to Gen G. There was still some moments, and I think you can tell, for those of you who are DFM, like, full truthers, believers, thinking, like, oh, this team's going to go to Master Shanghai or whatever, I do think they still have enough problems where that's probably not going to be the case, but I do think that pretty much every game they should be in that isn't against, like, the top 3, they should have a decent chance of winning that game. In 6th place, I'm gonna put T1, the team that DFM beat. Now, T1 is an interesting one because they're 0-3. The thing is for T1 that I do think in their first 2 games, they weren't actually that bad. They just played against other teams playing well. Against DRX, I don't think that's quite true. I do think that T1 against DRX did some things that I was like, ooh, that's not good. And I do wonder if their confidence has been shaken a bit, by losing to DFM, right? That might, I think, cause some problems for T1, and maybe that does mean that they end up, not doing that well. They don't make playoffs, that kind of stuff. Very much could happen, but I still do have faith that there is enough good there that I still want to put them 6th, even though they're 0-3. In 7th place, I'm going to put Team Secret. Look, you can just pencil in Team Secret for 6th or 7th pretty much every single time I do this. That's who they are. They beat Zeta, so yeah, that's where they are. Speaking of Zeta, I'm going to put Zeta in 8th place. Now, you could argue that Zeta should be lower, and I did think about putting Zeta lower. They very much could have been lower on this list because, I mean, it looks like they haven't improved from last year. Even with the roster moves, all of that, there was a lot of hype maybe that Zeta would finally be able to, crack the top 4 or top 3 or top 2 even of Pacific. It's definitely not happening, and that's a worry. Then we come to 9 and 10, and I'm going to put Global and Talon in some order here of 9 and 10. Now, here's the thing. As I'm recording this, they're about to play map 3 of their game between these 2 teams. Now, having watched the first 2 maps, I would say that Global looked the better of the 2 teams, having watched the first 2 maps. However, I do think that Talon, a little prediction from me, will win the game. So, I'm gonna put Talon in 9th, and then Bleed are getting left off the list. Now, Bleed, oh my god, it's bad. Oh my, to be honest, I kind of want to delete the Bleed logo. It's so bad, and we'll get to some of the teams in EMEA as well, where maybe that should happen. Yeah, they don't even bleed, but deserve to be on the picture, pretty much, with the way that they're playing right now. It is rough for Bleed. It is rough. So yeah, they're going in 11th, and I would be surprised if they weren't 11th the next time I do this in 2 weeks. Okay, and now on to EMEA. Now, this is what my EMEA tier list looked like last time, which There are some notable wrong things, but EMEA is impossible to rank right now. Okay, so let's start at the bottom, and this one is very, very simple. It's Koi. Koi, I really want to delete their logo. That was genuinely one of the worst games I've ever seen that they played against BBL. It was truly, truly woeful. And yeah, it's really rough for Koi. In fact, that Koi game was so bad that they got destroyed by the team that I'm going to put in 10th, because I'm still going to put BBL 10th. Even though they destroyed Koi, I still don't think BBL are any good, which just goes to show what I think of Koi. So yeah, just know that. Yeah, it's really rough here at the bottom of EMEA. Okay, in 9th place, pretty easy one. I'm going to put Giants here. They did look better than they did before, which is why they aren't, maybe 10th on this list instead. But I still don't think it was that great. I still don't really have much hope or expectation for them, to be honest. Okay, in 7th and 8th, this again is pretty easy. It's some variation of Liquid and Gentle Mates. Depends kind of how you feel about these two teams. I think you could make the argument either way. For me personally, I'm gonna put Liquid above Gentle Mates. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, Liquid absolutely threw a gigantic lead against Na'Vi. I mean, it was rough. The thing is, Liquid for the first map and for that first half of the second map, I thought genuinely looked like they were doing some good things. I was like, oh, Liquid, maybe you're better than I thought. Then obviously they threw. Gentle Mates are okay. They aren't bad. They can beat the teams I think below them on this tier list. But I'm still think it's a bit too one-dimensional. I still think against a good team like Karmine Corp, you saw like Karmine Corp were never in any danger of losing that game, and that's kind of where Gentle Mates are. Okay, this is where it gets impossible for EMEA. It really does get impossible at this point, because I think in reality, I want to put every single team third. This is where I think all of these 6 teams actually are. But someone's going to end up being put at 1, and someone's going to end up being put at 6, then you're going to be like, oh, that's harsh on the team that's 6. Oh, that's their number 1? Surely not their number 1. That's what you're going to end up coming away from this tier list, but I just want you to know, all of these teams are third. So who am I going to put in 6th then? Well, it's a team that I put in first last time. It's going to be Fnatic. I'm going to put them in 6th. And just so you know, I did this last time. I'm going to do it again. There is a gigantic tier gap here between 6 and 7. Okay? Just know that this is almost 2 separate lists. Right? But I'm going to put Fnatic 6. Why am I going to put them in 6? Well, they did still have some rounds against Giants where you saw and thought like, ooh, that's the old Fnatic, right? I remember a retake on Split. I think it was a 3v2, and they played it really well. And it was like, there's no way they're going to lose that round by playing it the way they did. And it was like, oh, there's old Fnatic. And there were some moments on the other maps as well where you went, oh, there's old Fnatic. However, there are still enough of the other moments where you're like, ooh, Leo or Alpha or Durka or Chronicle or Bosa or whoever, they wouldn't have missed that shot last year. So for that reason, I'm still going to put them in 6th place. Now in 5th place, this again is where it gets absolutely, what the hell, who do I put where, how, right? I'm going to put Team Heretics, I think, in 5th place. They did lose to Vitality, close game between 2 pretty decent teams here up in the top 6. So I feel like, it is what it is. For me, Heretics, and we'll get into this with Karmine Corp as well, but both those teams I think share the same problem, which is they're fine if their game plan works, but I think as soon as it stops working a bit, they aren't that good at adopting, something else on the fly. They aren't that good at reacting to what's going on in the game necessarily, and that I think is a big problem, and I think it showed up for both those teams this week against those other teams. I'm going to put the team that beat them in 4th, which is Vitality. Now, Vitality I still need to see a little more from. I'm still a little bit shaken from their Na'Vi performance, but I do think that they showed against Heretics, like, okay, this is a good team, they were playing well, and that they can compete at kind of the top of the EMEA. In 3rd place, well, this is where all of them should be, but I'm going to put Karmine Corp in 3rd place. Obviously, they did lose to Foot, and again, that lack of adaptation, Foot threw some really weird stuff at them, and Karmine Corp, I think, acted as if everything was completely normal. And it was not good, and I was not pleased. Number 1, though, is very, very tough, because there's 2 ways of looking at this. But I could put number 1, they just beat Karmine Corp, they look good in their first game as well, and everything has been hunky-dory, and their aim looks very sharp. However, they are playing some comps that I feel like are good for like a week if someone doesn't know what you're doing, but as soon as people have like footage of it and they know what to do going into a game, that then you will struggle mightily. I think that that is a problem for Foot. However, that's also kind of a problem for Na'Vi, as they showed as Team Liquid beat them on Lotus with their bizarre Brim comp, right? So I think both those teams have perhaps that problem sometimes. And also Na'Vi in the first half against Liquid didn't look great, right? Yes, they had the mental strength to pull it back and manage to win that map, which is crazy, right? It's crazy that they were able to do that. But the thing that happened before also happened, right? So I have problems with both these teams and putting both of these teams at number 1. But I guess just based on the performances that we have seen, I am going to put Foot number 1. Which does feel wrong, but simply based off what we have seen, I think that they probably do deserve to be number 1. However, if we are predicting going forward, if you're using this as a predicting tool, I don't think that Foot will win EMEA.